Yeah, I do know a bit about the world. I've been your proverbial globetrotter for decades. I've seen all the good, the bad and the ugly the world's got to offer.
Of course they're worried about unemployment. So am I.
I've talked to ordinary people, extraordinary people, political heavies, pumped-up rubber inflatable celebrities, and even the odd would-be if they could be. When you've seen people suffer through no fault of their own, when you've seen the madness of war, of racism, of poverty, it colours your view of what really matters. Amazingly, after all that, would you believe, I still think that politics is the best way for people to resolve their differences without killing each other. It's really important. It ain't football. Both as a football person and as a professional international journalist, I think, as strange as it may sound to a lot of people, I do believe it has influence that goes beyond the football pitch because of its universal nature. It can create relationships with people we didn't otherwise have. It can provide trade opportunities, cultural opportunities, all sorts of things that hardly anything else could provide quite so easily because of the fact that we can deal with just about any country in the world on the football level. The mighty MCG, an amazing stadium and sacred soil in Australian sport. But in a way, I almost hate this joint. I think it must have been the AFL demons out to get us. We were 2-0 up against the Iranians and on our way to the World Cup at last. And then suddenly, things went haywire. Everything fell apart. Bozza was valiant, but that Iranian striker kept his cool. And we were eliminated on the away goal rule. So close, yet so far from the Holy Grail.
I think to be brutal with you, and this is something I haven't really talked about because at the time it did hurt me, and not many things do, but it did hurt me. As one of the big players in the team, you always take the credit because that's great, but when things go wrong, you have to take a little bit of the, not a little bit, you have to take the major share of the blame. And you think about those things, so those are the things you think about at night before you go to sleep.
We're over there somewhere, and I'm not joking, but people all around us are actually bawling their eyes out. A lot of football folk I know, including my eldest son, still can't talk about that horrible night. It was gut-wrenching. It was like being grief-stricken over a football match. I mean, what's wrong with us? That was a seminal moment, that not getting into the World Cup, because our plan was to get into the World Cup and work backwards from there. What I'd like to think happened here in Melbourne, despite the disaster, is that I think people realise what all the fuss was about this game and why it is such a gigantic phenomenon, not just a sport. I don't think I'm quite like the legendary Liverpool manager Bob Paisley, who said that football's not a matter of life and death. It's far more important than that. When I think about it, maybe I am that bad, a genuine football tragic, and it's been pretty much a lifelong thing, really, from a bit of a player to a besotted fan to even sticking my nose into the running of the game. Well, when I was in the funny administration that existed at the time, we had a plan. It might not have been obvious, and part of the plan was to get into the World Cup. The second part of the plan was to get a really good overseas coach for the team, and we did. Terry Venables, a famous British player and coach, and he damn near got us there. It was probably his fault we didn't get there. Terry, hope you're watching. Nice to see you. Nothing I've done or seen over the years has diminished football's place in my personal and professional life, and certainly not my view of its importance as an enormous influence around the globe. Not too many people want to acknowledge it, but football's actually bigger than any religion. It's bigger than any political ideology, bigger than any economic system around the world. Quite frankly, even in this sport-mad country of ours, no other sport or game can make that claim and justify it. You could put it this way, the world game is just that, the world game. It's ubiquitous. As I speak, the Socceroos are sitting at number 21 in a world of 194 football nations. And that encourages us to see ourselves in relation to the rest of the world, not the other way round. We're not as bad as the Americans, who actually call their national baseball titles the World Series. Hello? But let's be honest, the other football codes in this country, rugby union, rugby league with its rather sad version of a World Cup, and most of all Aussie rules reduced to playing mongrel matches against Ireland, just don't relate to the rest of the world the way football does. The other codes don't like the fact that what they used to call wog ball or the girly game is now a serious threat. And if we get our act together even more than we already have, they quite rightly fear that we're coming to get them. And it's not a case of trying to knock off the other sports. It's just football having its rightful place as the one world game we've really got. The devoted fans of the other three codes of football in this country don't seem to be bothered by the fact that their games are so insular, so inward-looking. Well, good luck to them. They just might need it. But my point about football, soccer, call it what you will, is that it's not just a game. There's a lot more to it than that. When the Socceroos take the field at home or somewhere else in the world, do I want them to win? Of course, but if they don't, it's not the end of the world. I actually get a real buzz out of knowing that we're now taken seriously in the world game. The irony about football is that it sparks both ends of the passion spectrum. It's much loved, but at the same time it provokes the fiercest rivalries. Whole cities notoriously divided. And nothing, of course, matches the Football World Cup itself for bellicose displays of national pride. And on that score, look at tinder-dry Central America, for example. A real war was sparked there by a wrong result in a football match. Now, that's really wacky. I actually believe that, that matches between Palestine and Israel, which are beginning to occur, have probably got more chance of stopping that ridiculous conflict that's been going on now for 60 years than all the peace negotiations and accords that we want to name. If people can stop killing each other for long enough to play a football match, that's a bloody good start. And who knows where it might end. Occasionally it's true that when these tribal divisions get out of hand, they can transcend the game and football can become an excuse for ethnic rivalry. And yes, violence. Even here in Australia, the dark side of the normally beautiful game can rear its ugly head. Back in the 1990s, when David Hill and I were in charge of the Australian game, we hadn't really come to grips with that really tricky problem. Clubs based their names and their strips on ethnicity, and matches occasionally deteriorated into open conflict. The terraces could be quite dangerous places back then, and football was difficult to sell as a family game. But these days, that dark past is pretty much behind us.